Hi, welcome back. I am going to read part 2 of The Country Bunny and the Little Gold Shoes. So, if you remember, there was Cottontail, who, when she was a young bunny, always wanted to grow up to be one of the Easter bunnies. But as time went on, she got married and she had 21. So she never thought that she would end up being one of the Easter bunnies. But as she found out on the very special day when she went to the Easter egg palace, she showed how kind and wise and swift she was. And Grandfather Bunny made her the 5th Easter bunny and told her to come to the palace tomorrow. So that is where we left off. Cottontail is at the palace. The next evening, Cottontail knocked on the big front door and was admitted to the palace. There she stood in her country clothes, but none of the other 4 Easter bunnies laughed, for they were wise and kind, and they knew better. Those bunnies do not tease, right? They know better. They showed her all over the palace, from room to room, all piled high with eggs of gold and silver, and eggs that glittered like snow, chocolate eggs, marshmallow eggs, eggs for every child all over the world. Then, as soon as it was dark enough for the children to be asleep all over the world, the old, wise, kind grandfather gave the word, and the 5 bunnies set to work as fast as they could. First one, then another one would take up a large egg for a pretty little basket, and in a single hop would be out of the palace and away out of sight. Then in a moment he would be back again, and before you could say Jack Robinson, he would have whisked away again. Slowly the night wore away, and the bunnies began to look tired as they kept returning for more and more eggs. And in the palace the glittering piles grew smaller and smaller. Poor little Cottontail was very tired, for this was the first time she had ever gone so far or so fast in her life, and she was beginning to hope that she could soon take a little basket that was set aside for her own children and to go hopping home. But then old wise kind grandfather called her to him. When she went close, she saw that he was holding in his hand the loveliest egg that she had ever seen. It glittered like a diamond. "Peek through and see what you shall see," he said, and so she peeked. Through the little hole in one end, she saw a beautiful scene with a sleigh and a lake with people skating on ice. And he said, "Because you have such a loving heart for children, I am going to give you the best but the hardest trip of all. Far off over 2 rivers and 3 mountains, there is a great mountain peak. And in a little cottage on that peak is a little boy who has been sick for quite some time. He has been so brave and never once complained, so this egg is for him." The mountain was so high that there was ice on the top, and it'll be hard to climb, but if you get there, you will give more happiness than any other Easter bunny. Cottontail picked up the egg very gently and went hopping away on her journey. She crossed the first river and then the second. She went over the first mountain and then another. and yet another, until at last she reached the highest mountain of all. She was very tired when at last she got to the bottom of the great peak, and her heart failed her when she saw how high it was, and how slippery with ice and snow on top. But holding the egg very carefully, she started hopping up. At last she reached the ice and snow, and now she was almost to the top, and she could see the little cottage all covered with snow where the little boy was sleeping. Then something terrible happened. Her foot slipped and down she came. Downward she flew into snowdrifts, and then she left the ice and snow, and rolling and bouncing against the stones, she felt the air getting warmer. Poor little Mother Cottontail. Down, down she went, and she crashed through a thicket of budding laurel, rolled across a pasture, and finally struck against the trunk of a great apple tree that was just getting ready to bloom for Easter. And there she lay with the egg still safely clutched in her paw, but with a great pain in her leg. She tried to rise again, because she saw a lovely pink light in the sky, and she knew that in a few minutes more it would be day, and the little boy would be sad if he did not get his egg. But the pain was so bad when she fell down. Then she felt something touch her shoulder, and she looked up, and there, right before her, way off there in the distance, she saw somebody. Who do you guys think tapped Mother Cottontail's shoulder? Who could it be? It was none other than the old, wise, and kind Grandfather Bunny. And he smiled at her and he said, "You are not only wise and kind and swift, but you are also the bravest of all the bunnies, and I shall make you my very own gold shoe Easter bunny." And he reached over and he saw that for the first time that he was holding a tiny pair of gold shoes in his hand. And he bent down and put them on her feet. Suddenly, all of the pain left her leg, and she stood up and picked up the precious egg. Then, before she knew what was happening, she felt a sudden motion, and she found herself flying high in the air. Over the pasture she flew, over the laurel, over the stones, until at last, when she landed, she looked back and she saw that one single jump had carried her halfway up the mountain. Then she jumped once again. There's her special gold shoes. So she jumped again, and she was at the cottage door. Quickly, she squeezed through the tiny crack that had been left open just in case the bunny did come that way. And just like that, Mother Cottontail placed the egg in the hand of this beautiful sleeping boy. Then, just as the Easter morning sun rose over the edge of the world, she jumped quickly back to the palace, where she found her little basket for her own little bunnies, and she went hopping back home to give them a happy Easter surprise. Mother Cottontail found that the garden was tended, and sure enough, just as she had said, everything was in order. The floors were swept, and there were 2 lovely new pictures painted and hanging on the wall. The dishes were washed and shown in the cupboard. The clothes were washed and mended and nicely hung away, and her 21 children were all sound asleep in their little beds. And the little house of Mother Cottontail can always be told now from the homes of all other bunnies, because in a special place on the wall, on a very special hook, hangs a pair of very tiny little gold shoes. The end. Enjoy your spring break. Happy Easter!